Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in Internet Shitlords. And to start out with, I want to mention that as of now, there's a new product available on the Red Room. The Pundit Files number 24, which is Space Opera Location Encounters, I think it's called. So in the Pundit Files number 19, I did planetary generators for my space opera campaign called Sons of Heaven, which is for Star Adventure or basically for any OSR product, because that book has very little material that is like specific to the Star Adventurer game in terms of the mechanics. And it allowed you to generate planets in the Sons of Heaven setting, which is basically a kind of a post-apocalyptic space setting, a space setting after a great space confederation is torn to pieces in a interplanetary war, an interstellar war. And this issue, the new one, 24, has instead set piece locations with lots of random tables and generators and things like that for typical places you might find when you go down onto the worlds. So if you're running a space opera campaign, whether it's Star Adventurer or not, you might find either of those two products to be pretty interesting and useful. Especially this one is even more. The other one was system neutral pretty much. This one is even somewhat setting neutral. I mean, it does make reference to the Sons of Heaven setting. It suggests that these are worlds that got left behind, right? That were abandoned or that are on their own now. But you can easily adapt that to all kinds of different space opera settings. So be sure to check that out and all my other Pundit Files in the Red Room. You can pick up any of those for just $3.50. If you can get someone to give you $3.50, you can buy an issue of the Pundit Files. It's only available at the Red Room store. The link is in the description below. Up here we've got Sword and Caravan and Heroes and Villains of the Silk Road, which is one of the supplements for it. That latter one is a collection of biographies of mostly, I mean, pretty much all of them are people who actually existed and who were around in the time of the Sword and Caravan setting. And there's some other interesting stuff in there, including actual stats for the assassin class, as in the Ismaili, assassins, the real ones, and some high-tech Song Dynasty objects there. And then there's the Gonzo Fantasy Companion. This is an incredible resource for any game where you want to add some weirder elements of fantasy into the game. It's got some really great generators, some really great rules of all kinds, anything ranging from like high-tech weapons to different classes of near-human races, weird races, intelligent animal characters, tons of stuff on new like magic and magic items and monsters and all kinds of things. It was set up as a supplement, of course, for the World of the Last Sun, but you can use it in any fantasy campaign. So be sure to check that out. And all my other products are in the link in the description below. Okay, so getting to the main topic. You may recall I did a video about this. It was a few months back now. Where for the 50th anniversary of D&D, they had announced, among other things, they were doing, well, there isn't that many things, right? They really lowballed the celebration of 50 years of D&D, but they did come out with the 3 new core books, and you all know how, well, 2 of the new core books. Actually, one of them came out. The other one, I think, is just about to come out. I think it's going to come out before the end of the 50th year, but who knows? And then the third one is directly going in the 51st year, right? But besides all that and a couple of other things, like some little art books and stuff like that, they came out with a book called The Making of D&D 1970 to 1975. I think that's what it was called. Or 1974, I forget which of the two. And this book was it's a history of D&D, and it was supposed to have like the original draft version of the D&D rules, which they said wasn't available anywhere, but actually it is I believe it's available on public domain, because it was given us evidence in a court case that Dave Arneson was involved in. Secrets of Blackmore pointed that out, right? So apparently, if that's the only reason you want to get that book, just go get the free version of it, right? Because in that book, as I pointed out in my previous video, not my immediately previous one, but one back when they first started showing snippets of it, that book essentially it craps all over the original creators and players of D&D, right? It goes out of its way to talk about how sexist, misogynist, racist, homophobic, or whatever else the mostly white middle class gamers who made D&D and who liked D&D, how terrible people they were, you know. And there's great apologetics being presented in there about how, you know, these people were awful people, but D&D is a much better game now, so you really shouldn't like what you're seeing here. This is only a historical document for you to look at, but not to actually support in any way, right? That was the argument, which is a ridiculous and stupid argument, right? If you really believe that as a company, why are you promoting this? You're essentially saying, this is like, if you really think this is like the production of racist fascists or something like that, and then you still put it out anyways, the only possible explanation is because you want to make money off it, right? So it's really despicable if it's to be believed. Now, I don't think that the suits at Hasbro believed. I think they probably had no idea that was even going to be in the material, right? They're probably not even looking at this stuff, right? And so they're assuming it's going to be a love letter to the history of D&D and not something that's going to crap all over the memory of Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson and all the other original D&D designers. But it was, and now there's been a renewed controversy on the internet because recently the so-called lead designer, that's got to be in heavy quotation marks there, of D&D, the project lead, Jason Tandro, had some things to say about it. And this caught the attention, as I mentioned now, yes, in my immediately previous video, caught the attention of no less than Elon Musk and Grums and all kinds of other people, Clownfish and all sorts. I think it actually began when Rob Kuntz, who is essentially the last man standing, the last actual person from the original D&D campaigners, brought it to the attention of X, and then it got all the way to Elon, who called WotC basically despicable. And Tandro, he decided not to shut up about this, right? Which is a really bad move. Now, let me clarify a few things about Jason Tandro, right? He works at Wizards, and he has a very unusual qualification for working at Wizards nowadays, which is that he has actually done a tiny bit of work on RPGs. He has done some things. He's worked a little bit in the actual RPG hobby. That is, as far as I can tell, no longer even a requirement to be at Wizards. It's like, you know, it's not just an essential thing, right? But it's actually not even a requirement, because there's a large number of people at Wizards working there that worked in this 2024 version of the rules, who had no previous experience with D&D. Like, some of them never even played D&D, or played it like once or twice, super casual or something like that. A lot of them, as I pointed out, are like vegan cookbook writers and young adult novelists and bloggers. A couple of them are online YouTube channel people or whatever, or more likely Twitch channel live players in some show or another, right? In other words, they're actors pretending to be D&D players. But hardly anybody, there's hardly anyone left at Wizards who actually knows anything about game design. And Jason Tandro, therefore, to them, I'm sure he looks like, you know, like Steve Jobs or something, right? But that's only in comparison to literally a bunch of illiterates, right? People have no idea what they're doing, right? Because putting Jason Tandro there, it's like, imagine if you had like a ship, you know, let's say the Enterprise, you can pick if it's the starship or the aircraft carrier, it doesn't make a difference for this analogy. And you had to put someone in command, like Jason Tandro being put in command there. He's not the captain, he's not a commander, he's not a lieutenant commander or a lieutenant, you know. He's not a tactical specialist, he's not a science specialist, not a computer expert, and not even the ship's doctor, right? He's not any of those things, right? He is like the ensign that would have checked to see that the boots were shined the right way or something like that. And suddenly they're like, here you go, sir, you're in command now, you know? This is this is how far they have fallen, you know? So Jason Tandro decided also to open his mouth about this subject again. And he commented, by the time you see this, it'll have been yesterday, probably. But he commented today, from my perspective, on I don't know if it was X. I don't think it was X. I think this was something that was, because it's being shared around as an image, where he was talking to someone about when somebody asked him about the pushback against the making of D&D, right, against the content in this book and what was in it. And there he explains. He gives his explanation, and he says, well, see, here's the thing. We were making this product, and it became very evident to us that there were some people that were likely, and I'm paraphrasing this part, right? I'll get to the actual quotes that are really important later on, but here it's enough for you to get just the sense of what he was saying. That there are certain people that were no doubt going to be deeply hurt by this product because of how sexist and racist and homophobic and Trump voting it is, right? So because of all those things, it's going to be terrible. So I felt I had to do something. And that is his explanation for why he did this lengthy piece in that book, explaining that Gygax was a horrible person, that all the people involved were horrible people, that they were all racist and sexist, that they were all evil because you knew they were evil because they were white and middle class and from the Midwest, right? Those are fundamentally evil people to someone like Jason Tandro. And that he felt he needed to do this because otherwise the outcry would have been so great, it would have been 1 million people screaming all at once, or something like that, right? And then he said, and then in response to, but the pushback that you got was that you shat all over D&D, right? And his response was, well, I never even thought about these people, he calls them the grognards, right? And I will get to that in a moment too. I never even considered it because I personally don't really care what any of them think. That's essentially, might be just a little off word from work, so I'm not looking at the image here. That's basically what he said. He says, I don't really care what they have to say, right? They all got, they're whatever they're shouting about is not important, So that's the essence of what he said. He said that if you are a fan of D&D, the real D&D, if you're a normal D&D player, if you're a real D&D gamer, he doesn't care about you at all. He doesn't care what you have to say. He doesn't care about insulting you. He doesn't care about D&D, obviously. I mean, he obviously hates it because he said so in that book, right? In a book that he proudly published on the 50th anniversary of D&D. So these are the people that are in charge of Wizards of the Coast now. I don't know how many times I have to say this, but I'm sure that a lot of my fans already, people that are already around here that have been with me for a long time, are people that have been very well informed about this and would never get D&D products anyways. But there are still tons of people out there, and so I'm hoping that this message gets out. That's why I will ask you to share it anywhere you think people will be informed or find it interesting, or where they're going to get pissed off about it, that they need to know that this is actually what this is. This isn't because you look at the cover of that book, you read about the contents of that book. Nowhere in the book, in the book promos will it say this book craps all over Gary Gygax and claims that he was one of the evilest men in history, right, or something. It's not going to say that. It says, this is an incredible look at the origins of D&D, complete with a set of rules and everything else. So it's made specifically for people who like old D&D, and the idea is they buy it, they've spent whatever it is, I don't know if it's $60 or $80 or whatever it is now. It's expensive. Might be more than that, I'm not sure. I haven't checked. But that they buy that, and then, of course, the book is telling them how horrible they are for liking D&D, how horrible Gygax was. But they've tricked you into buying it at that point, which has essentially been a marketing plan of Wizards of the Coast for quite some time now. When you had the Radiant Citadel, for example, in places where they thought that the majority of people who would see it were, woke people, they would go on promoting about how proud they were that not a single white person was involved in the creating of the Radiant Citadel. But in the book cover, what you would see, or in the back cover, what you would read when you're like at Barnes and Noble and you see this product, it doesn't say that. It says this is an exciting multiversal planar spanning adventure, you know, and it doesn't say that most of that extra planar adventure involves food tasting contests and visiting night markets and looking at the wonderful details of non-white cultures, you know, and stuff like that. So that it's not really a D&D product in that same sense. And the same goes for a lot of their recent adventure products. So this is an intentional thing that they're doing. And so the people he dismisses as grognards are exactly the audience that he wants to trick, he wants to deceive into buying that book, right? Now, beyond there are some people who say, oh no, but you're saying he said this about all real D&D gamers, but he actually said it about the grognards. Okay, well, we have to look at the context of what that word is meaning to him in what he's saying, right? Because there's only two ways to interpret it, right? The traditional slang of grognard comes from the grognard that were the old veterans of the Napoleonic Wars, right? The old guard, so to say, which is a term that was originally used in wargaming, right? But it passed on to be a term in D&D for old school fans. It's generally meant to mean fans of older editions of D&D, right? Now, the best case scenario, that's what he means there. And in that case, he is still saying that the people that book is made for are people he doesn't care about. He doesn't want them to like that book. He doesn't want them to be entertained. No, he wants to teach them. He wants to lecture them about how bad they are, about how horrible D&D is. That's what he wants to tell them. And tell them that they're bad people for liking, if they dare to like these rules that are in the book that they have just purchased from Wizards of the Coast, right? That is the kindest possible interpretation of how Jason Tandro understands grognard, or how he's using it here, right? But in fact, that's not really the case, because, you know, the outcry against this book, a grognard is someone who is invested and excited about old school D&D, right? It's people who play old school D&D, play OSR games, right? You could fairly say that a majority of OSR players could qualify, at least conditionally, as grognards. Now, of course, the OSR goes way beyond just a kind of homage to old school, right? Most of my products, they have an old school feel to them, but they also have a kind of very avant-garde element, right? Whether it's, you know, exploring the limits of the rules, changing the way that magic works, or you know, looking at applying stuff that comes out of real-world history, folklore and legends, or things like that, right? And there are other games that are in the OSR, but that are in fact even more avant-garde than my own, so to say, going to really interesting and weird places, sometimes interesting, always weird, but sometimes interesting places with the rules, okay? So a grognard is someone who likes that. But the people who are complaining about this are not limited to grognards, because what a grognard isn't, there's no such thing as a grognard who mostly plays the current edition. That is not what a grognard is. So, but there were tons of people that were probably players of 3rd edition, which is not grognards, right? 2nd edition arguably isn't, maybe it is, I don't know. But, and lots of players of 5th edition that felt offended by what Tandro said. And he used the term grognard there, not, therefore, in my opinion, not as a description of, oh, only these old men who played D&D in the old days, and not as, oh, only these reactionaries who only play old school games and don't play D&D. No, he's using it as people who like D&D as it is, not as the Wizards is trying to make it, or rather, not as the Maoist degenerates currently working at Wizards are trying to make it, okay? So that is what he used it. We all know what he meant when he said grognard. He meant normal gamers who enjoy gaming as it is and don't want to turn it into a diversity funfair or a political propaganda vehicle for leftism, right? That's what he meant. And that's what he was insulting, is essentially everybody who likes regular D&D as opposed to wanting to like the new avant-garde D&D with all of the with all of the woke hipness that is now already looking so dated, right? after November, you know, that's it, it's done, you know, like there's and it's funny because you have dozens of companies now. Toyota's the newest one, and there are tons of others that have said they're completely dropping DI. They're no longer sponsoring any of these woke projects. None of that is going to be happening anymore. Because it's over, because everybody sees, right? This is a losing proposition for anyone who wants to engage with normal people, right? With normal people in the West, because the illusion that was constantly being trying to be maintained by these woke activists is that, yeah, everybody is supporting this except the chuds, right? But it's not true. And we saw it wasn't true in early November, right? We saw that this is what people pushed back against, and that people who hitch their wagon to that cause are doomed, okay? So that's the end of it, right? That's the end of the thing. But obviously the Wizards is filled with nothing but these fanatics now, right? Like I said, Tandro is one of like maybe 4 guys left there that has any kind of credits whatsoever at design. And I mean, he basically, if it was a normal situation, he would probably be the mailroom boy or something, you know? He would not be a lead designer. But there he is doing this nonsense. So essentially, this is once again pointing out, you know, how absolutely lost Wizards is. And that, you know, I know that most of you watching this already knew this, and this is just another log on the fire, so to say, from your point of view. But I want you to think about it from the point of view of so many people that are playing 5th edition, that are not necessarily looking for the places where they're going to find social media posts or YouTube videos about this kind of subject, but who, if they knew at least a certain percentage, you know, and it doesn't matter if it's 5% or 10%, right? But I bet it might be more than that, right? That they would be bothered by this at this point. You know, that I still believe that there are considerably more normal gamers playing 5th edition than there is anything else. You know, maybe not as considerably more than in older editions. Certainly, part of that is because of how 5e has been marketed. There's also probably some people who were playing 5e from, say, 2014 until about 2020 or so, and then have since that time at some point dropped out as there was a shift, right? Like basically after like Candlekeep onwards, they went full woke, right? As opposed to just little snippets, and it became increasingly intolerably bad, right? So there was a bunch of people that have probably given up on playing 5e and certainly aren't going to buy the new books, but that they might want to know that there are still alternatives like the OSR, right? And like third-party 5e products for that matter. There's some of them that are not in any way woke, right? And they're going to want to know about the outrageousness of the people working in WotC, and they're going to potentially look for alternatives that they might not be aware of. So that is why I would ask you to please try to share this anywhere you can, you know. And if this is your first time watching because someone drew you to it, well, check out all my other videos. You're going to be shocked, you know. And if you like the information that you're getting, the education you get here, then please subscribe. And check out all my products. They're in the link in the description below. You just click it up, click the description, and you're going to see links to every single one of my products. And they're all OSR games, which if you don't know, are games that are designed with a rule set that is based on a kind of foundational version of D&D, right? Like the basics of D&D that are those original rules, right? And then they're made by, it's a whole design school. It's not just me. There's tons of people who are doing this. That are making products that are compatible with each other, that are immediately recognizable to someone who plays any edition of D&D pretty much, and that go into like all these incredible and creative new directions that you can direct that same kind of basic rule set with modifications into all kinds of genres, settings, and all kinds of stuff that you will never find, levels of creativity you would never have found in WotC at any time, but especially not now, right? So be sure to check all of that out. Check out all my books. Check out Baptism of Fire and Lion and Dragon and Star Adventurer and The Invisible College and Arrows of Indra and all my setting books and all of that, because you're bound to find some stuff that you're going to find really interesting, especially if what you want is stuff that is just good gaming without specific political directedness, right? I know that in my channel I sometimes get quite political in certain ways, in the context of gaming at least. I don't talk about general politics usually, apart from maybe once in a while in a live stream. But my game products are designed to not have any kind of overt contemporary political messaging, right? Because I that's what I want. I want my games not to have modern day politics shoved in there in this ridiculous way like what Wizards of the Coast are doing. So, thank you everybody for watching. Be sure to check out all my products. Check out the Red Room and the Pundit Files series there. You can get there's a ton of great PDF. Every issue has a totally, a new theme or a new subject, and they each cost just $3.50. And check out all my other products too. And thank you very much. Currently smoking. This is a Mastro de Paya top class bent billiard, I think it is, with Argento roots.